Hey, podcast family. Thank you so much for being here for another episode. My guest on this episode is Diane Ducarme. She is the founder and CEO of Nectar Health, a company dedicated to adding years to the lives of those suffering from migraine disease. Diane's journey is as impressive as it is diverse. With an MBA from Harvard Business School, a master's in science, engineering, technology, and mathematics, and studies in traditional Chinese medicine, she brings a unique blend of expertise to the field of women's health. Diane's passion for making a difference and drive to understand the impact migraines have on individuals worldwide led her to found Nectar Health. In our conversation, we explore the complex nature of migraines, which are not merely severe headaches, but rather a neurological disorder that can affect the entire body. Importantly, Diane highlights the strong correlation between migraines and menstruation, with women being 3 to 4 times more likely to be affected after puberty. We discuss the impact of hormonal changes during the menstrual cycle and how contraceptives may play a role in migraine occurrence. We uncover the prevalence of migraines and debunk misconceptions surrounding their treatment, particularly mainstream medical treatment of migraines. Diane also shares her pioneering approach to migraine treatment and management, including a discussion on the gut-brain axis and its critically important connection to migraines. Diane's expertise and commitment to women's health make this episode an invaluable resource for anyone affected by migraines or interested in supporting those who are. If this episode resonates with you, send us a DM on Instagram. You can find Diane at My Nectar Health, and you can find me at Nicole M. Jardim. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy this episode. Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me. I am really excited to have this conversation.
Oh, likewise. I'm just so excited. So much to talk about together.
Yes, it is. I agree. There's going to be a whole juicy conversation. Everybody get ready. So I would love to talk to you about your background. Did you have migraines or have you had migraines? And how did you get into doing the work that you're doing?
No, I had no migraines. My sister was the one having them. And what happened is that our uncle had just died of a brain tumor, a brain cancer called a glioblastoma, extremely fulgurant and fast. And he left 4 children behind. And it was really difficult as a family. And so after that funeral, when my sister said, look, I don't want to scare anyone, but I have like these massive migraines and I've done a lot of MRI and I don't know why they happen, I really heard her. I think a number of friends had mentioned in passing they had had a migraine, and I thought they said they had a headache. When my sister mentioned that day, I really thought, okay, let's take that seriously. Let's look into it. And she was quite nervous because she had done 3 MRI, which is quite typical. And the doctor had ended up telling her, hey, please stop coming to me. There is nothing. And he even added, if there's something, it's not, I can't pull a miracle. So just, stop stalking me. And so I said to my sister, look, I know someone who had helped me back in China when I was living in China. I said, I know someone, her name is Dr. Yifang Zhang. I think we can call her and describe all of your symptoms, and we can maybe find the root cause of your migraines and solve for them. And that's what we did. And within 4 months, she had no more migraines, and she went back to her life, and I went back to mine.
What? Okay. Well, everybody, I'm sure, who has migraines and is listening to this, their ears are now peaked. So they're dying to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And you know what?
Yeah.
At the time, I had just no idea. I just thought, well, her head was in pain, and now it's no longer in pain because we just found why it was in pain. I had no idea, literally.
That's incredible. I mean, that is quite a change. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what a migraine actually is, because I think that the misconception is that they're just a really bad headache, right?
Yes, I think most of the population, like me before I helped her, and then I subsequently helped the daughter of a neurologist, and I thought, wow, that's wild. We think of migraine as a headache, and that's a really wrong thing to do because it puts a stigma on people. A migraine attack is a full body experience. It goes much beyond the head pain. Some people will have nausea. Some people will have vomiting. Some people will have visual disturbances called aura. Some people will have aura with pain, and some people will have pain without aura, and some people will have both. Some people will have what else? Sensitivity to light, sensitivity to sound, dizziness, fatigue, you name it. So lots of symptoms. And migraines is a genetic predisposition. So you need, 1 to 14 gene lucky that we have identified in the West that will cause these migraines.
Okay. And it affects a huge amount of people worldwide, doesn't it? And it affects more women than men, yes?
Yes, absolutely. And very few people know that. You know that because you probably have a ton of girlfriends and you're very connected in the female community. But essentially, because it's genetic, rightfully so, or as you could think, only 5% of boys and girls are born with migraines. And by born, I mean around age 5, 6, 7, 8, will have their first migraine attack, and will start to be medically treated for it.
That young? I
But
had no idea.
yeah, it can be that young. Yes, I have taken care of 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds. They're adorable,
Oh,
so cute, so cute. I had one 8-year-old in Seattle. She made me a drawing, and she had seen 20 neurologists. And I studied with her mom at Harvard, and so her mom knew I was not a doctor, but she said, "Mom, like the new doctor, she's the best," And she said, "Not only I don't have head pain, my stomach no longer hurts." So she made herself that connection. She started to talk about another symptom that she was feeling. But back to our women. So at puberty, the incidence is going to triple to quadruple for women. And so it leaves women with 18% of women with migraines.
oh gosh. Okay, that is a humongous. And so I we'll talk about the hormones, but you mentioned other symptoms. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Like you mentioned you just mentioned this little girl, like she had stomach pain. So was that part of her migraine attacks? Like, can that happen as well?
Um, so yes, because like a lot of people will have nausea and vomiting, and those are widely recognized symptoms in the scientific community. However, pushing the envelope a lot more, there's a lot other symptoms that come with migraines. Some women can have bloating, distension of the belly area, can have extremely painful menstruation, and even though those are not going to happen at the time of the attack, what you see, and there's actually a doctor that has started to research this, Dr. Nazia Karazan. Not surprisingly, she's a woman. And she's like, hold on, scientific community, there's just a lot more going on for these women than just the head pain. And she's totally onto it. And so, yes, so during the attack, there will be more symptoms. And outside of the attack, there will be other symptoms like PCOS or endometriosis or underlying root cause that will fire up in the gut-brain axis.
Okay. Okay. And so one of the other things I was thinking about in with regard to causes are the contraceptive pill, because I've had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of clients as well over the years
Mm-hmm.
who started developing major migraines when on the pill. Can we talk about that as well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So, a contraceptive pill for some women, certain contraceptive pill will induce migraine for some women. Some contraceptive pills not. Some contraception will increase their migraines, and some contraception will decrease them. So, I'll give you two examples. I had a woman yesterday on the phone in London, age 18, first onset of migraine, took a pill, instantly got into migraines, and she thought, "Whoa, what's that?" She went back to her doctor. She's like, "I can't have that." Was put on another pill. Now that other pill didn't give her instant migraines, but it made her bleed a lot. And when you bleed a lot, and we're going to go into some explanations later, when you bleed a lot over time, your body's going to be very depleted and you become more migraine prone. And so migraines started to creep in her life because of that pill, but she never realized and made the connection. I had an executive in Amsterdam. She had put a Mirena IUD 12 years prior, and 10 years 2 years into her migraine IUD, she started to have migraines, and those were connected. But because there was a distant relationship between the placement of the IUD and her migraines, she had not made the connection. And so just by removing it, we were able to reduce it by 70%. And she was just over the moon because she had been in pain for the last 10 years. So it was quite a big family decision. She was like, well, my husband, is ready for it, but are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm positive. I saw all of your data. This is it.
I mean, so that's a connection with the synthetic hormones that are in the contraceptive pill, right?
Yes. Yes, it must be. I think scientifically, it's been started to be analyzed. So
Hmm.
how women really respond to certain contraception and how it impacts their migraine. So there is science around that. However, I always, when I work, I use a combination of Western science as well as traditional Chinese medicine. And I think the way sometimes these medication impact the systems inside of your body that then provokes a migraine.
Right. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, because they're not the same as our hormones. So I imagine
Mm-hmm.
that, yes, I mean, and it even says it on at
They,
least a combined
yeah,
contraceptive pill. It says that migraines and headaches are a side effect.
you're good.
I mean,
Nice.
I've just looked at the paperwork. So,
Yeah. Okay.
yes,
Good.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I was just curious about that because I do feel like that has been a big side effect for a lot of my clients over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Hmm.
so I would say on this one, trust your instinct. And usually women are really good with it. And some gynecologists might have the tendency to say, wait, if you feel really strongly, be strong about your feeling and really trust your instinct.
Yes, totally. You're in the right place. I feel like this is what we preach here on the period party. So, um,
Yeah,
can we talk about how migraines develop? Like, what are the underlying causes here? Because obviously, you said that women get them more than men do. There's a cyclical connection, at least there has been in my experience with all of my clients over the years. So, can we talk about root causes? What's going on with these
yeah,
things?
absolutely. Absolutely. I think in our sort of more Western mind, we tend to not look at root causes, and we tend to make a blanket statement about what migraines are, like a head pain. There's so many variations of head pain. Some women will experience them on the temple, some on the top of the head, some across the eyebrows, some always on the right side, some on both sides, some moving around their trigeminal nerve. It's going to vary massively. Some people when waking up, some people at night. And so, as you can imagine, it's really one word, but many different things. And so, the way to medicate everyone the same will not always work. And so, it's really important to, as you were mentioning before, start to look at, okay, where is that coming from, right? Intuitively, as women, we're like, okay, there has to be a reason. And why does it triple at puberty? There has to be a reason. And so, there's actually one doctor starting to look into this. This is Dr. J. Pasricha. And the scientific community starts to really acknowledge that it comes from the gut. So we have discovered in the West the gut-brain axis in the last 15 years. In traditional Chinese medicine, this is really old news. It's been there for about 2,000 years, not as detailed and not as proven, but it's always been a core part of how they look at the body. And so the gut is defined as the entry of the food and the exit of the waste. And it does include hormones. It does include all of the digestive system, but all of the hormonal parts. And the problem with migraines emerge when you have a gut issue that then fires up in your brain, is what I see always.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on it? Because I love this. I want to keep going on this trajectory.
Yeah, so I think to do that, let's be laser sharp example. I think just examples we talk to it. Let's imagine we have a woman in front of us, Nicole, and that woman has had a copper IUD for, I don't know, a couple of years, 5 years, let's say. And for the last 5 years, she's been bleeding a lot. Now, if we take the average age of a woman at puberty, that's 12 years old, and we take her average age at menopause, around 50, and we assume that she's going to bleed 55 milliliters, apologies, I'm Belgian, 55 milliliters a month, like she's supposed to. She's going to lose in her lifetime 23 to 28 liters of menstruation. That's a lot, okay? That's a lot. A man doesn't go through that, okay? We lose substance, we lose material. Now, in my body, I'm going to have 4 to 5 liters of blood. Okay. So if I want to think, if I want to be on this podcast and digest at the same time, my body needs to do at a minimum 2 things, a zillion of things, but it's needs to make 2 tasks and think and digest. But now let's imagine I lost all of my blood for my migraine IUD, my copper IUD, and I don't have a full 5 liters of blood. I have maybe 4, maybe 3.5. I have less. Well, then I can either think and concentrate with you, or digest, or I can go run, or I can digest. And so my body's metabolism starts to operate very differently and starts to need to prioritize where the energy goes. But when I'm going to eat wine, cheese, or chocolate, women will report those as some of the biggest triggers, but not for everyone. My liver is going to become in competition with my brain. And so my brain's going to say, hey, hold on. I really struggle. Now, from a scientific perspective, is it the pure lack of blood? Is it the lack of oxygen? Not sure. We'll have to work with universities to find that out. But it's that, oh my God, I don't have enough. Can you send me more? And so if you take a medication like a triptan, they will constrict your blood vessels and force the blood back up to your brain, except it is intoxicated blood. So you're going to feel no pain, but you might feel a bit funny and a few side effects, and it's not nice. Plus, it means that the detoxification didn't happen and that your liver has started to build up toxins of that food you ate, plus the medication you take. Okay. Now, if we stay on that liver, so now we have a copper IUD woman who lost her blood. She's really tired. She's just really exhausted, not tired just, but exhausted. She has lots of sugar cravings because she's exhausted, sugar cravings before her menstruation. And she takes these medication and it adds the load of toxicity to her liver. Her digestive system is slower. And because she's adding toxicity to her liver, which in traditional Chinese medicine is hyper connected to the brain, of all of the systems, the one that is biggest communicated to the brain, is going to fire up in her temple on the top of the head and across her eyebrows. And so she's going to start to have migraines. And the more she's going to medicate, the more she's going to add toxicity on her liver. And the more she's going to have migraines. Now, we can go back to Western science. And in Western science, it's going to be called rebound migraines or medication overuse headache, MOH. And those are scientifically proven. Is the more you're going to medicate, the more you're going to have these migraines. And then after that, it's going to come a snowball effect of therefore her liver and digestive system being a lot more sluggish, her feeling bloated. She may start to develop a bit of a leaky gut. From there, it can transform into an IBS. And before you know it, that woman starts to have just a compilation of problems. And women who have migraines are usually heavily medicated for many things. And, when you look at the cost of healthcare that they need to go through is a lot. When in the first place, they're really penalized day to day with their head pain. So it can be, very isolating and really, really hard for these women.
Okay, you just completely blew my mind because I don't know that anybody has ever explained migraines in that way before. And I cannot wait to share this podcast with everyone I know who has migraines. And of course, everyone who's listening. But can we talk about the fact that no one takes that approach to migraines? And like you said, right, they're just prescribed these hardcore medications. At least that's been the experience that I've heard of from so many women over the years. And we're not looking at this like root cause that we have just been talking about. So talk about your approach. Like what are you doing differently? Because this is so amazing and such good information for everyone to have.
And I think you touched upon no one is doing it this way. And I think it came from my naivety of not knowing what it was in the first place. Because after my sister, and I have to tell you this story to tell you the rest of it, because then it will make sense. After my sister, a couple of years later, another friend came and she said, oh, I've had this really confrontational conversation with my dad. And I'm like, okay, what was that about? She's like, well, I've had migraines for 7 years. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. And she's like, oh yeah, well, it's okay. I've learned through the years to manage with them. But then my dad said I should get medicated for life, including having injections in my body or in my brain. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, no one does that, surely. Like that, of course, don't do that. Like, what are you going to do? Medicate for what? You're 36. So for 50 years, that's a joke. Don't do that. Like, that's terrible. Like, it can only harm you. And she's like, yeah, but he's really insisting. I'm like, look, are you born with migraines? Like, no. Well, you're not going to die with them. Like, there has to be a reason. Like, you know what? I helped my sister. I'm really busy with work right now, but let me dig up what I had given her. Let me dig up some of my books, and then I'll call Dr. Zhang. And if you don't mind, we'll do that quickly through WhatsApp. So through WhatsApp, I sent her about 30 questions. And from there, I'm like, okay, this is where the migraines are coming from. I'm like, eat this and that. And then I see her again, and I'm like, oh, by the way, are your migraines gone? And she's like, oh, yeah, completely gone. And this was in 3 to 4 months. And I'm like, well, by the way, why did your father tell you to take these medications? Like, I didn't understand the conversation. And she said, well, because my father is a renowned neurologist. And I thought,
Oh,
what? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm like, okay, hold on, just hold on. And I was like going through my mind. I was like, well, that's her father. Like, obviously he's renowned. Obviously he's super well educated. He's super sharp. He's also super well intended and focused. Why would he prescribe injections? And then I thought, you know what? Probably the food compounds I gave her is what they inject women with, right? So I thought, let me just dig it up. And this is a bit like you when you say, oh, I went into scientific papers on, pill and migraines, because I'm curious. I'm also the same. And I'm like, okay, let me dig it up. And I thought, oh, wow. Oh, these are painkillers.
yeah.
I'm like, why would they give them painkillers? Like, you have to, like, the pain is just a signal. Why would that's not possible? And I saw 18% of women. I'm like, wow, 18% of women. I have so many girlfriends. Like, when was I a bad friend? And then I would go to bed and I would think in my bed, oh my God, that friend, she was always saying, I'm going to go back home. I have a migraine starting, but I always heard I have a headache. This is because of that cancer situation that I had listened twice as much as usual. And I really felt bad. And so I started to pick up the phone and I asked my friend, do you remember you were telling me, you had migraines, do you still have them? And they'd say more than ever. And my medication load has increased. And I thought, would you mind if I try to help you differently? And they're like, oh yeah, bring it on. What have you seen? Like, are you no longer, I was with McKinsey for 8 years and, I had a corporate job. And it's like, I'm like, no, I just want to explore something because I think something doesn't make sense. And that's how I got into it. I think at that stage, I was still very naive on the amplitude of the complexity of what I was getting into. And I thought, oh, I could create a small AI that removes migraines. How cool would that be? And I think the one thing that makes this really different, is I have never taken that pain for something illogical. Never. I always thought if your body says something, it says it. As a child, I was sick a lot, and I got medicated a lot. That woman, she transformed my life. That woman in China, she transformed my life within 3 weeks. We can talk about that later. And there was an urgency of giving back. And I really thought, if your brain says it's unwell, then it is unwell. And no, I don't think you have a neurological disorder. I think it's a very I don't like this term. I don't think a fifth of the women have a neurological disorder. I don't think that's very respectful of the feminine part of the world that is producing the entire world that we are. And so basically, I take them like a fire alarm. I'm like, well, some houses have a fire alarm and some houses do not. It doesn't make your house more likely to go on fire. Quite the opposite. What it does is it's just sending you a signal that there's smoke or there's fire. Now, some fire alarm have one sensor. That's when you have a late onset of migraines. Some fire alarms have 16 sensors. That's if you have a really early onset. But the goal of the game is not to hammer the alarm box or to cut the electricity of the house. It's just to see, okay, where's the smoke and where's the fire coming? And once you extinguish them, the migraine goes. And when that happens, women are full of gratitude, of tears, and a little bit of resentment for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years of their life that they just lost.
Right. Okay. I mean, this is totally incredible. And I am just amazed, by the way, at what you were talking about with regard to your naivete when you came into this, because I was exactly the same way too. I was just like, I'm just going to help women fix their hormone problems. And, and I just said all of these things and just tried all of these things and had no idea whether it was going to work or not. And when it did start working, I was like, oh, I think I'm onto something. But you kind of just throw caution to the wind. And, I worked in film production. So the fact that you were in a completely unrelated
I
industry,
love it.
right? I know I was
Yeah,
very
yeah.
similar to you. So I was like, well, I'm just going to see how this goes. So it sounds very similar. So can we talk about this? Can we talk about the AI component and this
Mhm.
approach? Because obviously I haven't come across anyone doing anything like this using
Mhm.
AI. I know AI is so new and a little scary for a lot of us. So there's
Yeah.
that
So
too.
think of AI like Diane on steroids. So Diane, who is never forgets how she helped a woman. Like think of it, right? So if you call it Diane, like you say, okay, she never forgets someone she's helped. She has gone through 30,000 trackers. She knows 2,000 medications by heart. She knows what they're for. She knows what foods they interact with. She knows every single symptom under the sun and how they connect to migraines. She knows how ethnicity actually impacts how much food you need to have given DNA. She knows how long it's going to take you to get on your feet, depending on your gastric juices and your age. She knows your life stages and how it impacts your migraines. She remembers every single migraine attack you went through. She remembered the context. She remembered if you had your menstruation or what time of the cycle it was. And therefore, Diane's great because she helped so many people get on their feet that she's always only getting better and only getting smarter. And also she's available. She can cut herself into pieces to make herself available so that she never loses attention to help you. That's what I'm creating. It's just an extension of myself and of that doctor I'm working with, to help women relentlessly, and also in context, because women are not a static, not static. It's very dynamic. Their cycles dynamic. Their emotions are dynamic. What they go through, their life stage, everything's dynamic. And so the AI aspect was just, hey, you know what? I've helped a number of women now. It's really getting complicated. Plus, they need to take different foods, and even though those belong to the one you could find in the supermarket and are not overly complicated, sometimes they've never tried them. They don't know how to prepare them. So I need a bit of help with this, and then I need to know all of these medications. They talk about it, and I had to place all of that information somewhere and register it. I was receiving people, the same day, Nicole, I when I said, oh, I can help, then I probably, just like me, received really hard cases. And so I remember the same day I received this woman who was vegan, only eating organic, never medicating, 18 months of migraine every single day of the year. Okay. The local insurer said, we want you out. We don't want to pay for you anymore. Go back to work, take antidepressants. The same day I received another woman who was 56. She had done everything to try to get rid of her migraines, including have a hysterectomy. So she removed, she did a hysterectomy in the hope to get rid of her migraines. It didn't work. And when I met her, she had 40 years of migraines, of depression, of herpes. She was taking 6 triptans a day, 5 days a week. And I really had this moment of, oh, I didn't mean I could do that. I meant I could do the other stuff for my sister and that other friend. I didn't mean that. And
as in, it felt really complicated.
It felt super complicated.
Insurmountable, I'm sure. Yes.
And the first woman, it took me 2 months. In 2 months, she was on her feet. She cried. She was just so happy, forever grateful. She's on the website. Her name is Jessica. She's from New Zealand. Beautiful soul. She works in sustainability. I love to help women when they have a purpose in their life. And the second woman, it took me way longer because there were so many. I had to unpeel her like an onion. But you know what? She had patience. And she said, you're my only hope. And when we were a couple of months into it, she said, thank you so much for not giving up on me. Because by now, everyone would have quit. Everyone that I met in my life, they quit. And when I was discussing with men, they're like, why do you focus on such complicated ones? Just go with the easy ones. And I'm like, no, because uncool and it's discriminating, and that woman just deserves her brain just as much as everyone else. But once you have made these discoveries and you have helped her a certain way, it is useful to archive that and say, okay, next time we can actually do it twice as fast for some profile like that.
It's incredible. The success stories are just so cool. And like you said, the more complicated ones are so terrifying. But then to have success like that with someone who literally had a hysterectomy to cure her migraines. I mean, the fact that we're even doing that, because we know the uterus and the ovaries aren't the problem, but we're just taking organs out because that's the way to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. That's what's just
Absolutely.
done. It's
Absolutely.
terrible.
Yeah. And this is the thing is, I welcomed women, and when I would listen to their story, which I always do, I always start by listening. I ask a test of 94 questions, and these questions are really useful, but I listen. It's like, what happened? I used to feel very, very sad because I was like, oh my God, this is awful. Like I'd border have tears in my eyes. I'd hold myself together because I'm like, okay, we're not going to do that here. But I was like, this life is a nightmare. I just welcomed a woman, for example, her migraines kicked in when she was at school. She never managed to finish university. She's never managed to work. That woman is in a complete isolation. And we let that happen. And she's young. She's really young. She's like 32, 35. But now I have more like a sentiment of joy because I'm like, you know what? I'm so grateful you come here. I'm so grateful we're meeting. I'm here. I'm here for you, and stay really close to me. Stay close, track, do the work. I'll be every step of the way. I'll be next to you so we can move on. And I can say every step of the way I'll be next to you because systems help me do that. They say, Diane, careful, this one, she has a new type of migraine, she needs to be notified, you need to change her list. Hey, Diane, this one is about to have a UTI, she needs to eat a couple of foods, otherwise we're back on antibiotics. Hey, Diane, this one has really strong emotions, not sure what's going on, but you need to give her a few foods to cool her down, something's up. And these systems help me be there for them every step they need me in their context.
Right. And so can we talk a little bit more about if someone has migraines and they want the help that Nectar offers? Can you describe the process?
Yes. So it's very simple. You go on the website, which is mynectarhealth.com. And there's a test there, which is free of charge. And you take the test. It's 94 questions. It's funny. A lot of men told me, oh my God, you have 30 questions back in the days. And no one's going to answer that. And I was but I need the answer. And now I have
these women 94. Are motivated.
And they are so happy. They're like, oh my God, like no one made these connections. And there is so much other stuff going on in my body. And I didn't appreciate all of that. And wow, I'm making really these connections, and this is going to be new. And then we meet for an hour conversation. And I listen to her first, just to make sure, not two women are similar, just to make sure I grasped her profile correctly. And then I do all of the talking. And then I'm like, okay, so here's what's going on, lady, in your body. And we go over her history, how things build up, and why every single symptom she's feeling in her body actually makes sense. And at that moment, there's this gigantic bond between her and I. For me, because I heard her story and I feel immensely connected and committed to her. And for her, because she's like, okay, my body is not crazy. I am not crazy. I am making sense. And this is a new light. This is a new phase of my life that is starting. And I just feel grateful. And then from there, we set up the app together because it's a different app for everyone. And off she goes. And you know what? We even have a money back. That's wild. So if after 4 months of working together, she has no results and she's been eating and tracking and doing all of the right things, we give her money back. We have no interest in just taking people's money for the sake of it. We just want impact, and we're quite, bullish on what we have.
Well, I mean, that's a testament in and of itself. So you keep saying we, do you have a team of people who work with you?
Yeah, so there's Dr. Yifang Zhang, with whom I work, and she's wonderful. She's 70. She's like, Diane, you got this. You got the back of woman. She comes from a 5 generations of doctors that only use foods. And I loved that about her. And then Dr. Mary Jang here, who helped me put a second part of the AI together that relates to the vagus nerve. Then a team of health practitioners based in France, in the UK, and in New Zealand, so we can really serve people around the clock. And then coders in Ghana, in Canada, in Perth, accountants in New Zealand, because this is where I'm based, lawyers in Europe, because this is where the law is most protective for people. And so this is where I decided to, to protect people with GDPR compliance, et cetera, et cetera. So really cool. And you know what? They feel super happy with the work. I also have a small team of social media, which is new. It took me 4 years to come out of the closet. And I have to say, Nicole, that's the part. I think I love the podcast and I love interacting with you. I'm a one-to-one person. I think of all of the things I've done, social media is probably for me the bravest, but I'm ready to communicate. We need to give. This cannot carry on. And so there's an intellectual gift, but there's, social media gift, like it has to be shared. Like women can't be gaslighted and carry on like that. It's not working.
It is definitely not working. I know. I was thinking about that. I knew that like one of your talking points before we started recording was about your approach versus the mainstream approach. And I know you've spoken about a few people who are taking medication and doing all these things, but like, it's just so frustrating because you're kind of just beating your head against the wall when you're taking medications like 5 times a day or whatever it was you said that one client was taking, and not to be getting anywhere. And then to be told, like you were saying, that it's just a neurological disorder, like there's something wrong with your brain. Because I have friends who have recurrent migraines and they've done all of the traditional medicine approaches, and they're still right back where they started because they're just sort of sent on their way when they're told that they can't find anything. So I just really appreciate this different approach, because it's really the first time I've heard anything quite like it.
And it's so hard for them because like you go from one doctor to the other, some have empathy, some are in a hurry, like let's face it, they're busy. And then they do all of the tests, MRI, blood tests, and they say there's nothing wrong with you. I remember I had this woman in New Zealand. She was feeling dizzy every single day, in addition to her migraines, but she had a baseline of dizziness of 8 out of 10, so really high dizzy. And she goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, "No, I've done the MRI, I've done the blood test, everything clear, you're good to go. You have nothing." And she's like, "Well, hold on, I'm like super dizzy every day." "Yeah, but there's really nothing wrong with you." Like, "Yeah, but I'm dizzy, I can't function." "Yeah, there's just really nothing wrong with you." And we corrected that dizziness. It went to 0, and she felt immensely grateful. She won a few prizes at work. She's engaged now, and it's really nice. But the level of frustration and of deaf dialogue was quite strong, because I do think that whereas some new researchers like Dr. J. Basrisha are like trying to like link it to the gut-brain axis and saying, hold on, maybe we're looking in the wrong place. It's still going to be years before, and we look forward to contributing into that, years before we're actually able to explain all of it, and but not explain all of it in English, but explain everything in scientific terms. I think nature still has a lot of its terms hidden from us. Yeah.
I obviously feel the same way as you. I feel like our gut is obviously majorly connected to everything going on in our body. I was just actually recording another podcast episode with a fertility expert, and we were talking about the gut fertility connection. And so it's basically the root of everything. And so the fact that you've made that connection and you're helping so many people is so awesome. I'm curious. So when someone is working with you, are they getting, so they're basically getting food recommendations? Is that pretty much the gist of what you're recommending, or are there other things too? That's incredible.
So let's talk about it. So it's really food recommendations, but I'm not taking over their diet.
Right.
I'm only adding a couple of selective foods in their diet in a certain order. That's it. Then on the app, of course, they have their trigger food, because they're asked, okay, do I need to suppress anything? I'm like, look, there's triggers in your app that are your triggers. Some of them you will have identified for a long time. Some of them you're going to lift an eyebrow and say, really? That? I had no idea. I'm having it every day. If that's the case, let's discuss about it. But unless you're having any of these trigger foods every day, if you want to have it, have it. You just need to know it's an arbitrage. And so I'm really just adding food. And then the other thing is, they're like, okay, so do I have to stop my medication? I'm like, absolutely not. If you're in pain, your job, you manage your pain. My job, I remove your pain. Your doctor's job, reassess the medication needed. Okay. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you what you need to do with your medication. You follow the procedure that you're told, and you need to, do your MRI, and you need to do your blood test. These are important, right? So you need to rule out anything else. But my job is to remove your migraines. Once they're gone, then you can reassess with your doctor the need for medication. Meanwhile, if you're in pain, I'm no one to judge your pain level, or not your pain level, your resilience to pain, or your endurance with pain. That's very personal, and you need to manage it the best way you can. And I need to go as fast as I can to help you.
Yes. Okay, so it's so simple. That's the thing too that's really interesting to me with all of this, right? It's so simple. And because we're made to believe that our bodies are so complicated and so broken, simple. Right?
So it's the execution is incredibly simple. And so incredibly simple. The how to get what food to do their job is really complicated. I give you a few examples, because to remove migraines, you have to remove the underlying problem. Now, the underlying problem, or you need to soften it, can be, it can even be PCOS, or it can be cystic ovaries, or it can be endometriosis. It can be UTIs. Let's talk about, for example, I take a woman who has recurring UTI. So she's had recurring UTI for years. And she has each time received antibiotics for it. Yeah. And so over time, the more she has UTI, the more she has antibiotics, and the more she has antibiotics, the more she has UTI. So she starts to be in that vicious circle. It may go as far as, I've had a couple of women who would have bladder pain constantly. It's like they had a UTI without bacteria. So they have to take antibiotics just after intercourse. And if you do that, your gut biome, like everyone knows by now, your gut biome is wrenched. Yeah. So your brain is going to start, if you have a genetic predisposition for migraines, your brain's going to say, hey, hold on, can we change this approach? That's not good for me. It's not good for you. Can we change that? Your brain's going to start to usually feel very, very foggy. So in order to remove the migraine, I have to remove the fogginess. I have to change that biome massively. And so this is where what to know to do is complicated, but what to do is simple. Right. If that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does, because we're all unique beings and our bodies are all different.
Yeah. And it's all nature. And I think we're meant to believe that our bodies can't work, and also nature is to blame because it doesn't have nutrients enough. And it's like, well, are your gastric juices strong enough? Can you absorb food? Okay, if you can't, we're going to fix that too, because you're going to need to absorb, what I give you. And I always put teas and infusions, because they're easy and women are busy.
They certainly are. The fact that you're just making this as simple and easy as possible, because like you said, women are so busy. We're so overwhelmed with life as it is. Mm-hmm. I think that adding this to your plate, it just feels overwhelming, as in like adding the healing component of, like if you're working with someone to address whatever chronic health issue you're dealing with, whether it's heavy periods or migraines or period pain or whatever. Implementing a whole bunch of things is inherently challenging. And usually women are like, I can't do all of this. So you're also, in addition to curing them of their migraines, you're actually making it a really simple process, which like I said, I'm so excited to share all of this with everyone.
It's a simple process, because women are so busy. And I always tell them, look, you're going to have plenty of time later, because suddenly, so imagine, Nicole, if I was telling you, in 5 months of eating this food, you can have 2 times 24 hours in the day. Because this is what happens. Suddenly they have this unleashed energy. They had plans to have a migraine and they don't have a migraine. They're like, yay, what am I going to do with that time? Then they get curious. They do more. And I also want to say, we've used the word cure because it's genetic. You can never.
Yeah, I know. I should be careful with my language. Yes.
Only No, I just want to be mindful of it, and they can come back. So maybe let's talk about that. So a woman's gonna, let's imagine she has endometriosis and recurring UTIs, and her brain's really foggy and in pain a lot. And we're gonna undo that. She has a better biome. She has no more bloating. She's feeling great, nice and that. And then a couple of years later, she goes through menopause. Well, then she may experience another form of imbalance, and her brain will again raise its hand and say, can you please attend to me? We're going through a bit of a hormonal change right now. Can you support me? Can you hydrate my brain, please? So it's really thinking of the vagus nerve. So the incredible nerve that, takes its roots in your stomach and in your kidneys and in your gut. And then it goes like a tree as a trunk that goes in your neck and plugs in like a Tesla in your brain. That's this beautiful vagus nerve that we're constantly helping out, and it's discussing with us, and we're improving it. And so we're constantly managing. And so therefore we can say cure in the sense that the quality of life is massively increased, but the genetic is always there. And the genetic, I would say, it's a tool for longevity. It's not a, this is where I don't like the scientific language. It is not a neurological disorder. It's a tool for longevity. And we have to change the dialogue, and we have to let women be intuitive.
We certainly do. I know. I think that our intuition, that inner voice, it's been almost extinguished for so many of us by the time we get to adulthood. And I remember myself at 10, 11, 12 years old when I was having issues. I remember feeling like I needed to say something, like I needed to advocate for myself, that something wasn't right. And by the time I got into my early 20s, I had just about given up on that because nobody was listening. And, and I think that that's just the case for so many of us. And so you're so right in that you have to rekindle that connection.
To share the little story, I was when I was in China, I tried to put a migraine IUD, and I was hoping I wouldn't bleed so much. So I was like, oh great. So this was before I knew any of this, of course. And so I put the migraine IUD, and I start to bleed every day. And so I go back to my gynecologist, who's a remarkable gynecologist, and she says, oh yeah, you're probably spotting. I'm like, no, I'm bleeding. Yeah, you're probably spotting. I'm like, I'm bleeding. Can we remove this? Yeah, no, let's give it a bit more time. And I'm like, I'm bleeding, I'm exhausted. Can you remove this thing? No, we're gonna wait. And so I had to wait a whole 4 months. When she removed it, she said, oh my God, this really doesn't suit you. Like, do you want a third? Because I was like, oh, thank you. Like, don't go for it immediately, because this is just not a really cushy, welcoming environment for an embryo. I was like, thank you very much. I was telling you that. And so I find this happens a lot.
It does. A lot.
I'll give you another example with depression, where a woman's going to go to see a doctor, and I explain her situation, and the doctor sort of listens and says, so you're probably depressed, right? Is it like, well, have you seen my life? I can't take care of my kids. I just lost my job because, my employer thinks I don't like my job, but I loved it, but I had so much absenteeism, or, I have to hide to people I have migraines because it's hidden, right? So I'm going to try to hide it because, otherwise, I sound like a broken record. I can't go to social events. So yeah, my life's pretty tough. So I'm not depressed as a person, but the situation is quite depressing. So you're depressed, right? And no, but I'm not, like, that's not my personality. It's just the situation. Like, just put yourself in my shoes. But so you're depressed. Well, and then they're like, okay, am I depressed? I don't know. Like, am I? And so from a genetic standpoint, depression and migraines are actually quite intertwined. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the root cause is the same, or can be the same in some circumstances. But it's that self-doubt of, okay, am I someone I don't think I am? Like, and then they feel even more isolated. And so listen to your intuition. If you have a happy personality and you're in a difficult situation, everyone would feel down in that difficult situation. Don't beat yourself up. You're not, I would like to say you're not depressed. You just need to get rid of your migraines, and then you'll be yourself again.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. Can you share with everybody where they can find you, where they can find Nectar Health? I think that this is just going to be so remarkable for everyone who's suffering.
Yes, so you can find us on our website, so www.mynectarhealth.com. You can find us on Instagram, mynectarhealth. You can find us on Reddit, on Facebook. We really got into it, and I think you're going to love to see us thrive and start to have this beautiful conversation that should have happened a long time ago, but we got carried, I think, with the pain signal that I don't know how we got there, but we got there as a society, and I think this needs to change. And I think, like you say, a woman will go menstrual about this because it's taking control of their life, and they need to be freed. And we need those 18% of women to be the mothers, the daughters, the leaders that we need in society. We can't carry on with women medicated that much and in so much pain.
Thank you. Amen to that. Thank you, Diane, so much. This was really enlightening. I so appreciate all of the information you shared and all your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
That's a wrap. Be sure to click that subscribe button to join me for more Girl Talk Gone Menstrual in upcoming episodes. But in the meantime, check out my latest Period Party episode. And if you're looking for a deeper dive into your hormones, go ahead and take my period quiz at NicoleJardim.com/quiz.